All right, so let's jump right in. At the very heart of so many faiths, there's this one single foundational text. But is that one book really all you need? Today, we're going to explore this really powerful and, yeah, often controversial idea that a single sacred text is completely sufficient for your faith, your life, for everything.
So, the source we're digging into today kicks things off with this really striking analogy. It wants us to picture the Bible not just as some important book, but as the actual root system of the Christian faith. I mean, you can have little disagreements, right? Those are like broken branches. The tree's going to be fine. But if your understanding of the book itself is messed up, well, the whole system is in serious danger.
And this really hammers home just how high the stakes are. Look, getting a single verse wrong, that might be like a small cut, a minor injury. But to fundamentally misunderstand the role and the authority of the entire book, wow, that's a damaged root. That's a foundational crisis that can literally cause a whole belief system to just wither and die.
Which, of course, brings us to the central question we're tackling. Is this one book, this collection of writings put together over centuries, is it really enough on its own? Or do you need something more? I mean, people have been debating this for a very, very long time. Okay, so when you look back through history, believers have basically landed on three different answers to this question of where ultimate spiritual authority comes from. It's not just a simple this versus that. It's more like a three-way conversation. So here are the three main views, laid out pretty clearly. First, you've got the Reformation view, Scripture alone. Simple enough. Then there's the medieval Catholic position, which is Scripture plus church tradition. The idea there was that tradition acts like a guardrail, right? It helps make sure the correct interpretation gets passed down. And then there's this third group, which our source calls the enthusiast view. They say it's Scripture plus ongoing direct revelation from God. They're all about that living, personal experience. So you can see each one has a slightly different formula for how you get to the truth.
Now that Scripture alone position has a formal name. Sola Scriptura. The core idea is pretty straightforward. The Bible has everything you need for salvation and for living a Christian life. That's it. It's a closed system, it's complete, it's totally sufficient. You don't need to add anything else to it.
Okay, but here's where we have to get a little more specific. What does sufficient actually mean? Does it mean the Bible is a textbook for, I don't know, everything? Is it a manual for how to build an airplane or perform brain surgery? Well, according to this framework, thinking that way is a huge misunderstanding. So to clear this up, our source gives us a really helpful way to think about it. This idea of two different books that God has given us to learn from. You can see there's a really clear division of labor here. You've got the book of Scripture, which is all about the spiritual stuff, how to be saved, how to live a godly life, things you understand through faith. And then you have the book of nature. That's the physical world all around us. And we understand that using our reason, our senses. That's how we learn about medicine, farming, or how to build a car. Now, the real trouble starts when we get these two books mixed up. Like trying to find instructions on how to farm in the Bible. Or, on the flip side, trying to fix a deep spiritual problem with just a scientific solution. Or, and this is a big one, demanding some special spiritual message for a problem you could just solve with a little common sense. And look, this isn't just some abstract theological debate. The source we're looking at is really clear on this point. These different ways of thinking, whether it's adding tradition or adding direct revelation, they have very real and sometimes very damaging consequences in people's actual lives. So the argument goes that when you add tradition, even with the best intentions of keeping things stable, you can end up with beliefs that aren't explicitly in the Bible. And the example given is the sinlessness of Mary. But the source really saves its sharpest criticism for that direct revelation approach. It says that even though it usually comes from a really sincere desire to connect with God, it can accidentally trap people. It can create this crippling anxiety over every little decision and can even start to make faith feel, well, kind of like fortune-telling. And this leads to a really powerful personal story from the source material. Picture this. A young woman goes to her mentor totally distressed. A respected person in her church just told her they received a prophecy from God. And that prophecy was that she was going to marry a specific pastor. The only problem? She didn't want to. I mean, can you imagine? She was completely trapped. If you disobey the prophecy, you feel like you're disobeying God, right? It just goes to show how this kind of thinking can totally steal your personal freedom. To really drive this whole point home, the source uses one last and honestly kind of haunting analogy. It's the true story of the Collier brothers in New York City.
So these two brothers, they inherit this massive fortune. I mean, more than enough money to live in luxury for the rest of their lives. But instead of enjoying it, they became total recluse. They boarded up the windows of their beautiful home and just started hoarding. We're talking junk, old newspapers, scrap metal, actual garbage, filling the entire house from the floor all the way up to the ceiling.
When it was all over, the authorities had to remove over 140 tons of debris from that house. 140 tons. The brothers? They were found dead inside. One of them was literally crushed by the very junk he had collected. It's just so tragic. They had this incredible inheritance of riches, but they chose to live and die, buried in their own trash.
And here's where the comparison really hits home. The argument being made is this: a believer who has the rich inheritance of Scripture, but instead spends their life chasing after spiritual junk, questionable traditions, seeking special revelations for every little thing, relying on pop psychology, they're just like the Collier brothers. They're sitting on a fortune, but choosing to live in spiritual squalor. So in the end, the whole argument comes full circle, right back to the text itself. Passages like this one from Psalm 19 are held up as the Bible's own claim to be sufficient. And the claim isn't just that it's good enough, it's that it's perfect, that it's right, that it's a source of joy. It's not presented as something that's lacking and needs to be topped up with other stuff. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. For any belief system that's built on a single core text, this is the fundamental tension, isn't it? Where exactly do you draw the line between faithfully interpreting the text you have and actually adding new things to it? That's a question that continues to shape faith and practice for millions of people, right up to this very day.